Hello, how you doing? I
I'm
can
doing pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Yeah. How's it been since the last time we met?
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not
Hold on,
bad.
you currently work in IT, right?
No, I'm unemployed.
Oh, you're
I have
looking.
a job interview coming up on I think Monday, but
That's
like a
nice.
phone call or something.
Yeah. I think is what's the role about? Is it IT related?
Yeah, it's something supporting a new application for Windows 7. Not
Okay.
really sure exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, all the best with that. All the best. Yeah. Sure, the best.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problems. Yeah. Hello, Abdul. How you doing?
Hello, David. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. And you?
I'm fine.
Yeah. What's going on? Everything okay? Hope you've been having a
Yeah,
good weekend.
yes,
Yeah.
it was nice. It's
Yeah.
a little bit busy.
Uh, and you, but hold on, like I know you mentioned you guys are on the SCCM. You've completed your SCCM migration, right? From 2007 to 2012, or you're still in the process?
No, we already migrated to 2012.
2012, nice, nice. So,
Mm.
are you already using the latest version of 2012, or are you still using the old version of SCCM? You know, the new version, the 15.11, 16.02 version, or you're on
Um,
SCCM 2012.
okay. You mean which version exactly you mean?
So you know the SCCM 2012 R2,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Yes, it's R2.
last November they came out with the new version of SCCM that's just called SCCM. So there's a new version of SCCM called SCCM. It's supposed to be SCCM 2016, but it's no longer 2016. So SCCM will be SCCM 1511. That was 2015 November. Then they released another version for SCCM 1601. That is SCCM January 2016. Then they released another version for SCCM 1602, which is SCCM February 2016. And they'll probably release another version now. Are you on that version as well?
Oh.
Yeah,
No, no, I'm still on 2012
2012. Yeah,
R2.
yeah, because that's the you know the plan is Microsoft they are doing this thing they call software as a service, and the whole idea
Yeah.
behind it's kind of like the same way that Windows 10 operates. So it allows them to release features really quickly. Because in the past, what they'll do is you have Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 8. Sorry, apart from Windows 10, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, and other Microsoft products. What they'll do is they'll release the product, right? And then they'll start developing new features. But those new features, they won't release it to the market. So then they will pack all the new features together and release them as a service pack. So you have
Uh-huh.
Exchange Service Pack 1 or
One. Yeah.
SCCM 2012 Auto Service Pack 1. But now what they're doing is we want to get the features out as soon as possible. So why not just let's make it as a service? So SCCM will release new features in January, SCCM 1601. New features in February, SCCM 1602. New features in
Hmm.
March, SCCM 1603. So basically they are throwing out new features as quickly as possible. So
And
then
later on, they will go with the service pack.
yeah, it is a nice one though.
Mhm.
I've started test. We're still using 2012 in our home in an office environment, but at home I'm running the new version, and it does have some really good features, especially around Windows 10 servicing. So there's some real
Mhm.
good stuff around Windows 10 servicing. So, but again, that's for another time, but we'll discuss that. Yeah, good.
You are suggesting to do install this updates?
Um, you need new hardware to install it. So not new hardware, you need more hardware because it has more hardware requirements. So if are you
Mhm.
running your SCCM on a virtual machine?
Yeah.
So if you have more resources on your virtual machine, just add a few extra RAMs to it, and you can install it. It's good. Actually, I can if I let me share my screen quickly. You want to say something, Nicholas? Carry on. Because I see you were smiling when we were talking about Microsoft. New model.
No, no, I'm really enjoying this dirty chai latte that I made. That's all.
Ah, okay. Okay. Let's go screen share. Just let me know once you can see my screen. Then I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, nice. So for example, on my home one, this is the new. So if you go um, about config manager, so you see this is SCCM version 15.11. So the latest version is 16.02. That's February 2016. So this is November 2015. New version that was released. This is one of the main things is this Windows 10 service in here. One of the good things that this provides is you can, we won't go into Windows 10 now because we're not talking about Windows 10 in this Hangout. But one of the things with this new Windows is what they call branches of Windows. And there's a whole lot of explanation behind that. To make it as simple as possible, Microsoft will release um, a version. Okay, for example, they have Windows 10, right? Current version of Windows 10 is Windows 10 15.11, which is November 2015. So since then, they've developed new features in Windows 10. So that means next version of Windows 10 will be different from Windows 10 15.11 because this is new features. So they've developed new features, but they've not released it yet. So the only people that will have those new features are people that are on the insider build. I know you've heard about insider build, right? So for example, I could go under settings under my machine, and if I want, I can go here, get insider preview builds, and allow myself to be part of the insider preview. In other words, what Microsoft will do is they'll build all these new features, and people that are on insider builds, they get them first. So once they are like, okay, we are ready to go out, then they release that, and that becomes Windows 10 current branch. So in other words, you get so first thing when they quickly build it and release it, you get the insider build, right? And then once they release it out to businesses, they call it the current branch. And then the current branch can be around for a while. So afterwards, the current branch will move to what they call the current business branch. So in other words, they released SCCM version, sorry, not SCCM, Windows 10 version 15.11, November 2015. After they release it to insider builds, then they move this and it becomes the current branch, right? So instantly they are developing new features. Maybe the new features, maybe they're calling that Windows 10. This is just for illustration. Windows 10 16.02, February 2016. But the current branch, the one that is currently out for businesses to install, is version 15.11. So after a while, they will move version 15.11 and they will say, this is the recommended branches for businesses to install. So that becomes the current business branch. In other words, this is stable version, this has been tested. This is the version we recommend. So at that point, maybe 16.02 becomes the current branch, but the current business branch, in other words, the current one they're still recommending for businesses to install are 15.11. But businesses can go ahead and install 16.02 if they want to. But at that point, maybe they have a new insider build called 16.03. So I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sense.
Yeah, so for example, like they've got, if you go on my Twitter, I retweeted this like just yesterday. So I saw Twitter is a really good one to keep up to date, by the way. So Twitter is kind of like I use it as my news, my IT news. I just subscribe, I just follow a lot of IT people, and I just follow like a lot of the things that they tweet. And I know Nicholas is really active on Twitter too. So you're quiet, Nicholas.
Yeah, I tweet a lot, probably more than I should.
It's a good one. It's a really, I like it. It's really good to be updated. So there was one that I saw that I retweeted. So basically what they said is Okay, Windows 10 15.11 is now the current branch for business. So in other words, this is the recommended one for businesses to be installing is 15.11. So people that are still on 15.07, Microsoft is saying, hey, move to 15.11. But at the same time, there's a different build that is in the preview build. So that's like the kind of way that they are rolling it out. So they will just keep rolling out these new features as soon as possible. First of all, it will go to Microsoft, inside Microsoft, that is just Microsoft, the company itself. And once they think they are ready to go out, they release it to the insider build, people that are subscribed to insider build. And by the way, if you're a system admin and you don't want your users subscribing to insider build, you can use group policy to disable it. So because otherwise anyone can just go and just subscribe to it, and any latest version of Windows goes straight to them. So whether it has bugs or not, they will just receive that. And yeah, so if you want to disable it, you can disable it using group policy so that nobody can. We had a big debate about this in my team. So some guys were of the opinion that we should leave it enabled because a lot of our users are engineers. So they're technical people. Leave, these guys build softwares, they develop software. Leave them to test whatever they want to test. Why some are of the opinion that no, let's control everything, and so the people that were of the opinion of let's control everything, the people that were of the opinion of no, let's let them choose. If the thought is that if you go here and you click on this, you know what you're doing. Because normal users won't go click start and start subscribing for insider preview builds, that if you're going there, you know exactly what you're subscribing for to. And the people that were of the opinion of leaving it alone, usually you see the other IT admins that are trying to be like restrict everything as like you're still operating with the old mindset of let's lock everything down. Listen, this is a new generation of IT. You're not locking everything down and stuff like that. Our users tech savvy. And that debate went on, and eventually we were like, okay, let's just turn it off for now. And then a week later, because the company that I work for, we develop antivirus products and IT security products and all that. And they were like, we just got a message from one of the engineers. The new version of Windows 10, don't roll it out to anyone. It breaks one of our softwares. And the guys, they were like, let's lock it down, just started laughing. They were like, yep, I told you we ought to lock this thing down. If you didn't lock it down, we'll have broken all our software on all our computers and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting one. I mean, in your own opinion, do you think you switch this off or do you think you leave it enabled? You just let people choose what they want. You're muted.
I don't think I've ever worked for a company that would allow that. They were very specific about any kind of updates that any large corporation that I've worked for,
Yeah. Uh,
even development companies.
yeah. Wow. What about you, Abdul? You think you just switch that on or leave it off?
Um, if I can control it by a group policy,
Yeah.
maybe I will open it for some user, which
Yeah. Some people do
no,
that too.
no, yeah, like IT or developers or something,
Yeah.
but not for all the users.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Actually, some people did recommend that. Why not just let us leave it enabled for the engineers if they need to test something and just
Mm.
switch it off for everybody else. So yeah. So that's like the other one. So yeah, the latest version of SCCM, if you want to test it out, install it. It's got some really good features. So basically, you can create. So you can see business ready, long-term servicing branch, release ready. In other words, you can create your own internal service branch. So for example, you put certain computers on the current branch. So those are the people that will be like your pilot because the current branch will eventually become the current business branch. So the people that are on the current business branch will be running the stable version. People that are on the current branch will be running the branch that has the latest features. And then eventually, when Microsoft says, now this version is now the current business branch, you don't have to manually maintain that all the time. All your users that are on the current business branch, once Microsoft says this is now ready for current business branch, they will instantly get it. SCCM will manage the whole updates and everything. So you can create your own rings for Windows 10 servicing. because the whole mindset of the way we release updates in the past will start going away. So now it's called servicing because you're not just releasing security patches or bug fixes, you're actually releasing new features to Windows like or frequently. So that's like one of the good ones. And then of course they have some cloud integration with Microsoft Intune connector and all that stuff. And then the other thing is that the old application catalog that we use, right? The web page that uses Silverlight. So that old application catalog is going away. So they have a new version of Software Center out. So they have a new version of Software Center out, and that new version of Software Center. So for example, if you deploy an application to users, they will see it in application catalog. If you deploy an application to computers, they will see it in the Software Center. Now the Software Center has both your deployment to users and to computers, but then it's a new version. I'm not sure if I go Software Center, do I have Software Center on this one? Let's see. Maybe not. Do I have Software Center on this one? Um, yeah, but yeah, there's a new version of Software Center. It has a slightly different look. So you see, yeah, a few other new features also. Okay, so for today we're talking about operating system deployment. Um, has anyone ever done like full-blown operating system deployment projects in your enterprise? Nicholas or Abdul, have you? Just
I'm waiting to finish this Hangout to start it.
which one do you have? Is it for Windows 10? Is it?
Yeah, yeah. For Windows 10 fresh installation.
Ah, nice. Okay. And Nicola, have you done any operating system deployment project in an enterprise?
Sort of.
Yep.
Everything was mostly using. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Sorry,
Can
my
hear you.
thing keeps making a lot of
Ah, no,
noise.
I can hear you clearly.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I did a deployment from like XP to Vista
Yeah.
with a domain migration.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so long ago that everything's pretty much different these days. There was no
You you'll be
systems
surprised that
running any of
there's very little difference. You'll be surprised that there's very little changes yet. But yeah, let's quickly talk about that. So, and the idea I was thinking of following here is to kind of take a more practical approach. So we could go about and talk about just the theoretical concepts in the textbook for the course that we're following. But I'm thinking let's take a more practical approach. So the very last time that we discussed operating system deployment, we talked about how or just an idea. This is not something that's set in stone. This is like an idea. This is just to supply us ideas about if someone were to come to Abdul and Nicola and say, we want you to take over the deployment of operating systems for this enterprise. What are the things that should come to your mind that you consider? What are the thoughts that should come in your mind from the technical standpoint? Also from like um, the or the standpoint of how do you manage it also. But from the technical standpoint, what are the things that should come to your mind? And the very last hangout on operating system deployment, we mentioned that every operating system deployment starts with, technically speaking, well, doesn't start with that, but starts with something called a reference image. And we explained what that means because what you have is that you have an enterprise where people have all these different client computers. Let's make this. Actually, let's just get some pretty pictures. It's been a while since we used some pretty pictures. Laptop, computer. Let's get some pretty picture. Make it a bit. So you've got all these different laptops and desktops. Which one? Yeah, this one looks okay. Um, let's delete this. Let's get ourselves a nice, pretty looking laptop. And let's make it very small. And then, yeah, there we go. We have ourselves a laptop. Yeah, and there we go. Control V. Got two laptops. Got three laptops. Now let's copy this. Ah, we got lots of laptops. Yeah. So you have, in an enterprise, you have all these different laptop models that different users use. And at the same time, you have desktop machines. So let's look for desktop PC. You have all these different desktop PCs that people have also. Anyone would do. Yeah, maybe. Go. Yeah, here we go. Uh,
So the first thing that you'd want to say to yourself or ask yourself would be what uh, sort of specific applications that your enterprise runs that could cause conflict within an image or may not run correctly.
So that's part of
Is
it.
that kind of
So that's all part of it. So that you're right. That's all part of it. But in the sense, so it depends on where you're coming from. Let's say you're in an enterprise where it's a brand new enterprise. Let's just say that hardly happens, but let's say it's a brand new enterprise, or let's say it's a new branch office. They have a branch office in Texas. Now they're opening a branch office in Syria. Now the branch office that they are opening, you have this project to deploy operating systems on all the computers there. Now, these are not existing computers that are being upgraded. These are brand new computers. In that sense, you're not worrying about application compatibility or all that because you're not doing an operating system upgrade. You're doing a brand new fresh install. So in that case, what you probably be wondering, or typically what you probably be wondering is, um, you have all these machines in this enterprise, all these different laptops and desktops that you have to put operating system on. Now, we already know like the whole process of you can't go around putting CDs in them one by one and installing them. But what happens is you need an image or an operating system image so that you're going to be pushing down to all these machines. Because if you can't go to them one by one, then in that case, what you probably have is you have a server here somewhere. You have the image that you're going to be installing on these machines. You have that image stored on this server here somehow, and then you push down that image to these machines. That's probably what you have typically. So what this one is, we'll get to that SCCM wise, but that's probably typically what you have. Now, if you're talking about like the case that Abdul is talking about, where you most likely have to do an upgrade, then you have more questions to ask yourself. If it were me, again, this is not set in stone. This is just to share ideas. If it were me, one of the things I'll probably consider is I've been given a project to do an Windows 10 upgrade, for example. One of the first things I'll consider is what are the existing hardwares in my company? And the reason why that is important, does anyone know the reason why that's important? If I'm doing an upgrade, a fresh install, why would I be asking the question of what are the existing hardware? What's the reason?
Yeah, because maybe Windows 10 it has some special hardware requirements,
Exactly.
which yeah.
Yeah, because you want to know the hardware requirement. And that's very important because okay, just to give you like just to share like for example like what happened with the Windows 10 project that I did for our business, where first thing we need to find out what exists in the environment. We have all this hardware that exists in the environment, collect information on all of them. So there are tools that you can use to collect information on all of them. And then we went to the manufacturer's website. In our own case, mainly Lenovo and Dell machines. So we went to the manufacturer's website to see if these hardwares are supported for Windows 10, because that's really important. Because what happens with hardwares is you buy a hardware computer and the manufacturer will be like the hardware computers have different devices, Bluetooth devices, webcams, and all this stuff. And what they will do is they will release drivers for Windows um, 8 whenever Windows 8 is released. they will release drivers for Windows 8.1. Now, what you may find out is that the driver for Windows 8 may be the exact same thing for Windows 8.1. Or in some situations, the drivers for Windows 8.1 may be completely different from the drivers for Windows 8. In which case, the drivers that you're using on Windows 8 will not work. So what that means is if you take this machine and on the manufacturer's website, the machine is a Windows 7 machine. They have these drivers for Windows 7. But unfortunately, the drivers that they have for Windows 10 is not the same that is used on Windows 7. In some cases, they are the same. But it's not the case. What that means is that as part of your upgrade, you have to be considering driver installation, driver reinstallation as part of that. Otherwise, you have multiple issues afterwards. Or in even some situations, the manufacturers will say, we are not supporting Windows 10 for this device at all. In which case, they're not even going to release any drivers for it for Windows 10. So you upgrade this machine to Windows 10, the multiple devices may stop working, and then you have no drivers for them. So that's why I probably go, let's find out what are the existing hardware on this machine. Let's find out if they meet the hardware requirement. Let's go to the manufacturer's website. Let's find out if they support it for Windows 10. So we go from there. So in our own situation, we had to highlight to the business, hey, we have roughly about 600 machines, 600 devices in the business that according to the manufacturer are not supported for Windows 10. So what do you want to do with them? Want to upgrade them to Windows 8.1? You want to refresh all of them, get rid of all of them and buy new PCs for all those 600 users? What exactly is the plan that you want to do? But that's where where you find out what the existing hardware is. So after finding the existing hardware, then you find out what are the existing software that are installed on these machines. And the reason for that is the same reason. You want to find out, are they supported for this operating system? And what I'll typically do is you get a machine, I have all the software that I know about that I used in the business, have it installed on that machine, then do a manual upgrade to Windows 10 and see what breaks just on a single machine. Carry on, Nicola, you want to say something? Okay. Yeah, I thought. Yeah.
I got nothing. I'm just listening at this
Okay.
point.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and see, if anything breaks. So just do the manual one first, and then see if anything breaks, and then I can start making note of this application is not supported or this application had an issue. For example, in my own environment, for example, where I took a machine, put a Windows 10 DVD inside, has all our software on it, just triggered manual setup.exe, double click, let's do a Windows 10 upgrade, and then it threw an error and says, hey, your antivirus is not supported. So I'm making notes of all these issues. I'm like, okay, there's an issue with our antivirus on Windows 10. So make a note of that. Oh, okay, after I finish the upgrade, I realized that this software stopped responding. So I make a note of that because all those I'll need to find workaround or fixes for them before doing automation. Actually, automation is really easy because what automation is once you can understand the manual process of something, then you can automate it. So I usually start from the manual. So just take it manually, do the upgrade, see what breaks, then see what the fixes or workarounds for, then find out how do I automate these fixes and workarounds. But yeah, we've probably went off course. Let's go back to this. So, okay, so we talked about like the issue of the reference image, which is that you have all these different hardware, you have to put a Windows 10 image on them. What do you want to be in that image? And we talked about that, and we talked about different ideas of what do we want to be in that image. We talked about, is it a good idea to put um, Office on the reference image, for example? So in this situation, somebody may think, yes, it's good to have Office on all these machines because all of them are going to have Office on them anyway. So why not have Office in the reference image? It's going to save time when you're deploying it. But that may not necessarily be true. It depends on your organization. In my own organization, if I put Office in the reference image, it's useless. The reason for that is because we have we have locations in about 21 countries. Many of them requires these service packs, these language packs. So, for example, people in Germany, they want Office 2016 uh, with their language on it. People in France want it with their language on it. People in Sweden want it with their language on it. And what happens is I get this reference image, I put Office 2016 on it, right? Put Office 2016 on it, install all the existing Windows updates on this. Install all Windows updates, put Office 2016, install all Windows updates. But I can't install all the service packs for all the 21 locations on this reference image. I'm not going to be able to do that. So what I'll probably do is at the point of deployment, I'll be like, if this machine uh, belongs to the UK location, and don't install any language pack. It already has the English language pack. So if this machine belongs to the France location, install the French language pack. You know what? Just so I'm making that decision as I'm doing the deployment. The moment I install the French language pack, all these updates that I've installed are void. Because majority of Office updates, Microsoft will tell you if you install any language pack after you've installed this update, you will have to reinstall this update. So it makes no difference anyway because I've spent a lot of time putting all these Microsoft updates in this one, but then eventually after we reinstall the language pack, all the updates will have to be reinstalled anyway. So I'm like, okay, I'll just move my Office updates to my deployment. And so I'll deploy Office during the deployment, deploy the language pack based on the location, and then after that, go pull down the update. Because if I do it in a different order, I'll just have to be doing the same thing twice. Because the update will have to be installed after the language pack is installed. So those are the kind of things that one has to like pay attention to. What do I want to be in the reference image? You have to find out for your own organization. And majority of these are by trial and error. You may think, okay, I can put Office 2016 on my reference image and then put it, and then you realize actually down the road, this is not actually working properly. So you have to remove it and move it to a different stage. You may say, I want to put Silverlight, for example, and then you realize that after you put Silverlight, maybe Microsoft releases Silverlight update once every 2 weeks. And now you're like, okay, this is not working. I don't want to be updating this reference image once every 2 weeks. So I'll just move Silverlight to the deployment rather than being in the reference image. As a general rule, I will just say whatever you put in the reference image are things that are needed by everyone and doesn't change frequently. So those are the things that I would recommend putting in the reference image that you're going to be pushing down to these machines. Any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas regarding what we've discussed so far? Anything? Abdul, any comment, any thoughts?
It's clear now.
Yep. Okay, and Nicola, what about you? Any thoughts, any comments? So, yep.
No, I
No.
mean the basic concept
Mhm.
is kind of the same with like I never really thought about the difference between I guess European conflicts of language packs and so forth and
Yep.
American issues and then I mean so what are you supposed to do? Have a different reference image for each language pack or can you just put them all on there or I
Yep.
mean
Abdul, do you want to help with that? So, what the question that Nicola is asking is that okay, in that kind of a situation that I just described, where there's lots of locations with different language packs, and then Microsoft actually, if we go bring up Microsoft website, Microsoft will say, um, if a language pack, so Microsoft will say, see this language packs will need to be reinstalled. After I'm sorry, this update will need to be reinstalled after you install this language pack. Let's see. Um, Okay, Abdul, do you want to answer that for Nicola? So what would be your thought? How do you undo something like that?
Okay, in your scenario, if you have, different sites and different countries, and you need different language back,
Mm-hmm.
I guess in your, organization structure, you will have, different collection.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, and I can, deploy, put this, Office and Office language back
Mm-hmm.
on application catalog,
Mm-hmm.
and they can install it from there.
Yeah. So that's one way to handle that. So in other words, what is saying? Okay, so this is where let me try to make break it down a bit. So normally there are different stages in this. So like we said, you have the reference image, right? And we said the reference image, eventually that's what will go on all of this. All of the machines will have the reference image at the base. So
Yes.
eventually, what you're going to be deploying to the machine is something called a task sequence, which we'll talk about again. It's something called a
Yeah.
task sequence. And the task sequence is basically a series of steps. So the steps may be something like apply reference image, right? And after applying reference image to the machine, install application 1 and then install application 2 and then apply this customization. So in the case where I'm like, here's the thing, Nicola, is whatever I put in the reference image saves me time. So this is the reference image, right? This is the deployment. Whatever I put in the reference image saves me time in my deployment. Because if I don't have to install application 2, if I can move this step of install application 2, maybe this is going to take 5 minutes to apply application 2. But if I can move this step of installing application 2 and I can put application 2 inside the reference image, this will save me time during the deployment. Because during the step of applying the reference image, application 2 is already in the reference image. Maybe applying the reference image will now take maybe 30 seconds longer, but it's going to save me 4.5 minutes of time. But in the case of applications that you cannot put in the reference image, maybe due to the restrictions that we mentioned, one of the ways you can do is if you can't put it in the reference image, you can move it to the task sequence. And then you can create you can how do I put this you can create customizations around this. In other words, you can say only install application 2 if a machine has an IP address of 2.2.2.0/24 is from that network, and I know that this network belongs to machines that are in France. So I'll say only install application 2, or I can do it by anything. I can say only apply it. If a machine's name starts with FR dash, anything that starts with FR dash, that's only when I want you to install application 2. So in my own situation, that will be something like, so will probably be something like the step will be install um, Office 2016, and then the step will be um, apply Office language pack. And that will be like a group. And under this apply office language pack will be something like this. Apply French language pack. And the condition to apply this will be if machine name is fr dash whatever. And then I can go down, down, down the list like that and say apply Swedish language pack if the machine name is SW whatever, and say if machine starts with SW dash star, apply the Swedish language pack to it. So, but what that means is that now this is going to take more time because the time to evaluate all these conditions, the time to apply office here, and then to apply the language pack and then evaluate the condition and determine which right language pack, that will add more. So maybe my deployment time will now be like 1 hour and 20 minutes. Whereas if I was able to get a lot of these things in the reference image, my deployment time will only be 1 hour. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to say, okay, I still want my deployment time to be 1 hour. So I won't even put all this step in the application in my task sequence. So what I'll do is I'll put this application on the catalog somewhere on the network, yeah, through the application catalog, and say to users, after your machine has been deployed for you, you go in here manually by yourself and click on this application, and this application will install Office and the right language pack for you. So it depends. So you can either move it around. So you can move it to the reference image stage or to the deployment stage or to the post deployment stage. So it depends, but that you have to figure out, usually by trial and error, where you're like, can I move this application to reference image to save deployment time? Because majority of admins are like, the target is I want to be below 1 hour deployment time. In other words, a new user comes to the company, the company has employed a new user. Within 1 hour, we can get the machine ready and the user is ready to work, to begin to work. So many people are like, I'm looking for that 1 hour deployment time. But then to achieve that, oh, you have to move certain applications that your users will need that you can move to the reference image. You have to move them to the reference image. Some you can't. For example, some applications, if you go to their documentation, they'll tell you if you apply sysprep after you've installed this application, you've broken the application. So that tells you this one cannot go in my reference image. Because for reference image, you have to apply sysprep. So we talked about reference image in the last one. So that tells you this one cannot go into the reference image. Then you have to decide, do I want to put it in my deployment process or do I want to move it to the post-deployment process where users can either do self-service or IT technicians can assist the user to do the installation post-deployment, whatever you want to do in that case. So is that clearer, Nicola? Or is that still confusing?
That makes sense, especially the part about breaking the application after installing things. 'Cause, I mean, it can get so complicated with
Yeah, it can.
all the sort of ins and outs of that.
It can. But again, the whole principle is the same. The whole principle, if you can break it down again, the whole principle is the same. The whole principle is you start with the reference image. This is the one that will go on absolutely every machine. Yeah. If you want, you can decide to put nothing in your reference image. It won't be wise. It probably won't be wise to do it that way. You probably could. It depends on the situation. So let me not say it won't be wise. You probably could, depending on your situation. Maybe you have a good reason for not. So, but then the other thing is you could decide to save some time in your deployment process by moving certain applications over to the reference image. I mean, that would be an awesome thing to do. That will save you a lot of deployment time. If let's say you're like a single location company, you can move a lot of this stuff in your reference image and your deployment time could be really short. Really, really short. Because all you're just doing is apply the reference image, maybe install one or two applications, and that's done. And your deployment process is done because all the other applications are embedded in the reference image. And that can make your deployment time really, really quick. And then you can go to your boss and brag and say, see, if you employ somebody new today, within 1 hour, the user can be ready to work because the machine will be ready within 20 minutes. All the accounts and everything can be ready within 20 minutes, and the user is ready to start being productive. So it depends. You have to decide, how do I shift this around? Which one can be moved where? And then you go from there. So again, there, start with the reference image. And after you create like a reference image, which we talked about like in the last discussion, there's a whole, I mean, all this process, we could talk about it for 10 different hangouts. Process of creating a reference image. There's a way to automate the creation of the reference image, but that's like um, for like maybe special hangouts or whatever. Okay, so after that, you have a reference image that you've created, and then you're now ready. So one other thing that we mentioned, the last one, is that your reference image, it's advisable. Many industry people um, is that you make this process outside SCCM completely. So this process is not even related to SCCM at all. So we talked about that in the last one, that most likely what people would do is you have a separate computer, usually a virtual machine, because virtual machines, you don't have to um, install a lot of drivers on them. So you have like a machine somewhere on your network. And on that machine, you'll probably be running something like Hyper-V, VirtualBox, VMware Workstation, whatever. Um, VirtualBox, VMware Workstation, anything you're running on that virtual machine. And on that virtual machine is where you create your reference image. And most people, what they'll do is they'll have MDT set up somewhere. We talked about that, where you have MDT set up somewhere, and you actually use MDT to create this reference image here. And the whole reason for that is it makes it easier for you to repeat it. Because, for example, MDT is kind of like similar to like what SCCM does. But what you can do with MDT is you can create a task sequence. And let's say this is reference image task sequence. And step 1, install and default Win10 operating system. So the Win10 operating system that comes from the DVD, so no modifications, nothing at all. That's what is on this. So this is a task sequence. So reference image, install default Windows 10 task sequence, install the applications that you put in your reference image. Or let me just put it this way: install reference image applications. Yeah. After installing reference image applications, maybe apply your corporate branding, and then after you do that, it depends. Assuming you're in a location again where you don't need things like language packs, this is a good place to apply all Windows updates, so that doesn't waste time after your deployment or during your deployment. Apply all Windows updates, sysprep, and capture. So you have this task sequence in MDT already set up. So what happens is Microsoft releases a new Windows update for this month. That will come out in 2 days' time, Patch Tuesday on the 12th. So they'll release new Windows update. So you go and say, oh, I'm generating my reference image for April 2016. And you don't need to change anything in this step. All you need to do is just run the task sequence. It will apply all the latest updates, including the April 2016 one, and it's going to capture this reference image somewhere. And then you take that captured reference image, which is your reference image April 2016, and then you go to Config Manager, and then you import it into Config Manager. And it depends on you. You may decide to be doing that once every 2 months or once every 3 months. So you have this task sequence separate from Config Manager in MDT. MDT is a free application already set up. And what that does is it just runs through like this whole process of the task sequence that you use for your reference image. It's going to install the default operating system. It's going to install your reference image applications. You already have them imported into MDT. It's going to apply your corporate branding. It's going to apply all Windows updates to up to date. It's going to do the sysprep, and it's going to capture it. So this is a reference image called build and capture. And it's going to capture it. And once it captures it, you take the image that it has captured, you go into Config Manager, and you go under Software Library, under your operating system images, and then you go Add operating system image, the location where the captured reference image is. You look for that location, you go next, 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 and you import it in the config manager. For example, this is my own reference image. This already has some applications already installed. So this is Windows 10 Enterprise build 1511, my custom ref image. And usually, I don't know if I've added it here, but usually what I'll do is in the description, I will add all the custom applications that are in this reference image. I'll add them to the description so that somebody can have a look and see in the comment and see, oh, I'll say something like reference image contains Office 2016 Silverlight, um, all um, all C,
Visual C++.
yeah, all visual, that's right, all visual C++ with distributables. What else do we put in there? Visual C++, Silverlight. What else? What else? What else? .NET, sorry, .NET. So Windows 10 comes by default with .NET 4.5. So, but many applications make use of .NET 3.5. So you want to add .NET 3.5. So I just put all that, and I'll say this is my reference image. It contains this, and I'll probably put something like it and say this is for March 2016. So I know, okay, that's not writing. I'll say March 2016 so that I can come here and I can know exactly when this one was created. And then next time I need to generate a reference image, I don't have to be doing it manually all the time. Now, there's nothing stopping me from generating this reference image manually. There's nothing stopping me from um, opening up Hyper-V, install Windows on it, Windows OS on it, install all the applications I need on it, apply all the branding manually, install Windows Update manually, do a sysprep manually, then use a boot image to boot into WinPE and use DZIM to capture. There's nothing stopping me from doing all that manually. But again, do you really want to be spending the time to be doing that manually when you could just have MDT, which is a free application, and you can just have this task sequence already set up to do all this stuff, install all this stuff, do all the things that you need to do manually. It's going to sysprep and capture it manually. All you need to do is every month, whenever you want to update the image, just right click, start the task sequence, let it start running. It's going to finish, capture everything. Go pick the captured reference image, import it into configuration manager, start using it in your task sequence. Any questions at all? Any questions? Or is he?
Okay.
Yeah, carry on, Abdi.
Basically, what you are saying, build the reference image using MDT
Yep,
and move that WIM file to the to SCCM
yep,
and deploy it.
yeah, yes.
Mm.
So you can build your reference image manually. There's nothing stopping you from building it manually. So it's just what
Yeah, but
men
manually it's require a lot of steps.
exactly. So you have to,
Yeah.
because you again you can just go install the OS manually, install the applications that you want in there manually, do sysprep
Mm.
manually, then use boots to WinPE and capture it manually. You can do that. Or you can even do
Yes.
it from within SCCM. But the practice, actually, if you go on Microsoft, if you go on the internet and search uh, create Windows 10 reference image, Microsoft documentation recommends that you create it using MDT. That's what Microsoft, because it's again, so as not to mess things up, just make your reference image creation completely out of SCCM. SCCM is for deployment, right? The MDT, which is a free application, and this is a very, very wonderful guide, which I've just recently updated, just a few days ago. It will guide you. This is exactly the one I use in my enterprise. It will guide you on how to set up your reference image creation lab. Step by step, it's going to guide you how to set it up. with the MDT starter sequence, the applications to add. Again, Microsoft recommends here that you add Office 2013. In my own enterprise, again, by trial and error, because I added Office first, and then I realized that people kept contacting me. People in the service desk kept contacting me that, hold on, we're deploying this task sequence that you're giving to us, but after we deploy it, we have 100 updates waiting for us. I'm like, hold on, but I added all the updates. Then I went to read the update documentation, and the other documentation said, after you apply a language pack, you have to install this update. I'm like, aha, okay. So I had to move Office out of the reference image process to the deployment process, and then move the application of the update afterward. So this will give you like a step-by-step on how to use MDT to create that reference image, and it's going to create it, capture it, and then you can import this reference image into Config Manager. And then once it's in Config Manager, now you're not talking about reference image anymore. You're talking about deployment. So again, remember the processes: reference image process, the deployment process, the post-deployment process. So some people try to use MDT to deploy, but again, that's for if in case you can't afford Config Manager. But if you have Config Manager, there's nothing saying, I mean, you just use Config Manager for that. So that will just capture. So again, this good documentation. I'll post it in the chat window. Good documentation by Microsoft tells you how to capture it. Actually, and to be sincere, so this is the one I use. I recommend you start with this. But there's another one for people that are bold. So if you know that you're bold, this is the one that I actually use in my own enterprise. This one. So if you know that you're bold, you can attempt this one. I am planning to do like maybe a special hangout on it at some point. If you know you're bold, you can attempt this one. So this one is good enough, but you can even take this one further, where you won't even have to create the Hyper-V machine. You can just go right click or just type in a command, not right click, type in a command, and it will actually create everything for you. Create the Hyper-V machine, deploy the MDT task sequence, start it, capture it, do everything. All you need to type is one command. So it's called PowerShell is King, created by this guy, Michael Nystrom. It's very, very good. I can show. I think I'm not sure if I have the demo, but I wanted to show the demo and just to. So basically, it has like all this custom PowerShell. Ah, okay. Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I mean it's a really, really good one. But it took me a while to figure out how to use it. But I can do a special hangout at some point. But what this one just allows you that it extends the automation. So because in this case, if you're using this one, you still have to deploy all these machines manually by yourself. You still have to deploy the machine that you're going to be deploying the reference image on manually, and then start the boot process, and then boot it using the boot image, and then start the task sequence. So you won't even have to do that with this. You just type the command, new autogen reference image, boom, it's going to pick it up, create the Hyper-V virtual machines, deploy the empty data sequences, run through everything, capture it, and push them out to WIM files. You just go get the WIM file at the end of the day, put it into SCCM. You won't even have to look at it at all. So, but that's for the bold. Okay. A step further. So now you have your reference image that has the applications that you want inside here, imported into Config Manager. The next thing is from an enterprise standpoint, you want to begin the deployment. So one way to do that is you can just use SCCM by itself. There's nothing bad in doing that. But it's one of the things that you see as you're going like in with SCCM is that there's like kind of like a little bit of a difference between Microsoft training with the ones that for example, the ones that I did, and what you actually be doing in the real world. One of such differences is when I went for the training for the SCCM training, they only taught us how to use SCCM for deployment. But even Microsoft's own website will say integrate SCCM with MDT for deployment. So yeah, it's kind of like one of those ones. Microsoft website will say integrate SCCM with MDT, but in the case they're only teaching you how to use SCCM. So this brings me to like one of these ones. So let's bring this one up. So what are the components that your operating system deployment is using? So you need Windows 10 ADK. So again, that's all part of the prerequisite if you're deploying SCCM already and that you'll have put on that. So you need Windows 10 ADK. And the reason why you need Windows 10 ADK is that actually, like in the backend, SCCM makes use of Windows ADK component. What do we mean by that? By in the backend, SCCM make use of Windows ADK component. What do we mean by that? Here's what we mean. You have a machine that you want to deploy. This is a bare metal machine, has no operating system on it. So we'll say it has no operating system on it. Now you have your SCCM server here. So this is your SCCM machine, and you have your reference image here. But here's the thing is that this reference image will need to be downloaded to this machine. But this machine has no operating system on it. So which means you have to boot this machine into some kind of operating system environment where at least it can have network connection. So that environment is called the boot PE environment, boot pre-installation environment. And what that means is there's a very light version of Windows that you can push down to this machine so that the whole goal is so that this machine can boot up with this very light version of Windows, and then it's going to have network connection, and then it can go to this machine to download the reference image. But this very light version of Windows, it doesn't come with SCCM by default, so you can't find it with SCCM, but it comes in Windows ADK. So SCCM uses Windows ADK. So let me put it there. SCCM uses Windows ADK to create its bootable image or WinPE image. So SCCM uses Windows ADK. So those are kind of like the components to be aware of. Let's show that in a bit. So what do we mean by that? Again, the machine itself has no operating system. It has to be able to boot into some form of operating system to have network connection. So you have to create a boot image. So I can just right click on this and say add a boot image. And I can say path to the WIM file. Okay. Um, Go to my C drive. Let's go to program files. Windows deployment kit is there somewhere. Microsoft deployment toolkit. Pin images x86. Somewhere it has the boot image in it. But the whole point that we're trying to bring up is actually let's just close all that. Let me see the existing one I created and just see the location that this pointing to. Oh, okay. So actually, sorry, my bad. Sorry about that. So that's my own bad. I think I can just point. Let me just point to a location here. Let's point to LB SCCM2. So just point to any location actually, because it's going to create the boot image itself. So I think I have a share called SCCM sources hidden share. So go to LB SCCM2 SCCM sources. Yeah, I can go on that one. I can just test boot image and just give it a name, test.wim, and click open. Because I thought this was just pointing to add a boot image Okay, that's add a boot image. I want to create a boot image, not add one. Do you want to lose? Okay. Cancel. Sorry, I think I'm misunderstanding stuff here. Sorry. So because I've already created the boot images here, I can create another one here. So that's why. So I can only add the boot image after, because I've already created these ones here. But these ones were not there originally. The way SCCM was able to create these is that SCCM is using Windows ADK, because Windows ADK is the one that has the boot image in it. So it's the same thing. If I integrate MDT with SCCM, is that MDT will also be using Windows ADK to create the boot image. And just to show a quick demo of how do we integrate MDT with SCCM, is that if I go to Microsoft's website, download MDT, install MDT on my SCCM server, then I can go and say, yeah, I'll see configure config manager integration. So once I install MDT, I'll see this option. And if I click on that option, it's very easy. I make sure that I have my SCCM console closed. And then I can go install MDT extensions, put my SCCM site server name and the code, and click next, next, next. And at the end of it, what's going to happen is that it's going to add MDT extensions to config manager. And then if I go for example, under boot image now, I can see this option, which wasn't there before. So again, all I had to do was install MDT on this machine, right? And then go and look for that option for configure config manager integration, and it's just going to integrate SCCM and MDT. And now I can go create a boot image using MDT, and I can just click that here, specify the location where it's going to save it. But look at this, it says note, Windows 10 ADK must be installed on the current machine in order to select this option. Why is that? Because both SCCM and MDT, they don't have the boot image in themselves. They use Windows ADK to create the boot image. So that's one thing to remember, that is that you need Windows ADK. Now, a bit of real world warning here with Windows ADK is that, for example, Microsoft has Windows 10, the latest version which you saw, the current business branch, is Windows 10 15.11. Now, when they released Windows 10 15.11, they released Windows ADK, we can call it 15.11. But the thing is, Windows 8 ADK 15.11, it has bugs. So Microsoft will recommend, so before Windows 10 15.11, they have Windows 10, um, then they have Windows 10 15.07, and then they have sort of like Windows ADK 15.07. So don't install the latest version of Windows ADK. Look for this old version to install, because this version has a lot of bugs. So they tried to fix it, but then the fix that they gave to it was really complicated, and many people didn't like that. So for example, if you go to Windows 10 PE 15.11 and search online, you probably see, yeah, look at the very first thing that came out, issue with the Windows 10 ADK for Windows 10 version 15.11. So be careful of that version. So if you have this version already on your SCCM server, my advice would be uninstall it, install the previous version, the Windows 10 ADK 15.07. You don't not to have issues. So it has this version. So install the RTM version of Windows 10 ADK. Make sure you don't have this version, because it has a lot of bugs in it. So that's just to warn you before you start trying to troubleshoot and then you realize it's just because of bugs. Yeah, Abdul, you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, before you said to keep, MDT in a separate machine
Mm-hmm.
from the SCCM,
Yeah.
and now you mentioned that to integrate MDT
Mm-hmm.
with SCCM.
Yeah. So to explain that, so again, you have the reference image creation process, right?
Yes.
So for the reference image creation process, you're using purely MDT to create it.
Okay.
And the reason is because MDT is free. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you're now moving to the deployment process. This is where you want to start deploying this reference image and the applications. Now you can do it
Mm,
with SCCM alone, but
okay.
if you integrate it with MDT, it gives you more functionality. Let me show you an illustration.
Especially in building the task sequence.
In the deployment, even in the deployment. So you're not using,
Mm,
again, so you're not using MDT integrated with config manager to build the reference image. You're using it for the
okay.
deployment, but then it gives you more functionality in the deployment. Let me show you this one. So look at this. So go under task sequences, right? I go right click and I go create. So there's not, again, Abdul, remember that there's nothing stopping you from using only SCCM. So the reason why I'm mentioning some of this, you know, the reason why is because, again, I saw this disconnect between what they taught me in training and what actually is going on in the real world. So because majority of SCCM blogs that you go to, majority of guys that are like really advanced in SCCM deployments, this is the method that they are using. This is the method that Microsoft recommends to use, but they are not putting it in their training. I'm not sure why. So, for example, if I go just create task sequence, right? So you can see once I've integrated SCCM and MDT, I have two options here. I can create MDT task sequence, right? And I can create a task sequence. Now look at this, create task sequence. So this is a pure SCCM task sequence. Um,
Okay.
so let me even see if I already have one SCCM task sequence created. No, I don't have one created. Okay, so let me say install an existing image package. Okay, or create a new custom task sequence. Let's just quickly create one. Let's call it SCCM task sequence. This is for deployment. So we've already done uh, the other one. So I select my boot image. Okay, and then next, I have my custom task sequence I can begin to edit. Yeah, task
Mm-hmm.
sequence is ready. So I go right click on it and click on edit, and you see the,
Okay.
yeah, you see the options that are available to me. I go hard, look at that. I have um
MDT.
yeah. So but look at these options that I have. I have this run command line, software, disk. Okay, yeah, not bad. If I go here, which is okay, this one is already I think an MDT task sequence, and I go add. Is this an MDT one that I created? So create MDT task sequence. Aha, okay. Um, client task sequence. Yeah, it's gonna be leading me. I don't want to go through like all this wizard stuff again. I'm thinking. So the main thing is that with MDT integrated, you get more options that you did not have. For example, if you look under MDT here, you can see you can install roles and features, running PowerShell script, install language packs offline and online, um, configure ADDS, configure DNS. Um, so you have more options than you do if you just have an SCCM task sequence. So it gives you more options.
Okay.
And I'm
And,
really, yeah, carry on.
yeah. Now I just now it's become clear
Mhm.
because it was I was mixing between the building the reference image
Yeah,
and the deployment.
yeah,
So now it's clear.
yeah,
One more question.
yeah.
If I have already ADK
Mm-hmm,
8.1 installed,
mm-hmm.
okay. Should I have installed Windows 10 ADK also?
Yes, you can use Windows 8, 8.1 ADK to deploy Windows 10, but just move to the Windows 10 one. Yeah.
Um, so I can keep ADK 8.1 and also install ADK for
Depending,
Windows 10.
if you move to Windows 10, you remove 8. I'm not, I think, does it remove 8.1? I think on mine, I think it removed 8.1. If I go to C drive, program files, um, deployment, is no, that's not the right one. This one, I'm sure that it's not deployment toolkit, Windows kits. There we go. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I think remove 8.1 and just use 10.
Okay.
Mm,
So remove and uninstall. Okay.
mm, yeah, and just use the Windows 10 ADK to for the deployment.
Okay.
Yeah. So one other thing to note is that like in terms of like the um MDT integration with SCCM and just using SCCM alone is that, for example, like when we talk about like more functionalities, just to show you an example, if I have a situation where, like in my own environment, again, this is not for every environment, in an environment like where you have a bit more complexity, right? With all these different locations and all these different departments and stuff. So in that case, I have, um, all kinds of crazy different departments and different combinations of applications. How do I make a dynamic task sequence to say things like, if a user is in finance, install these applications. If a user is in finance in Sweden, install these applications. You know where you have to do like all this kind of dynamic um, decisions, right, in your deployment. So one of the things that MDT provides, for example, is it provides something called UDI. It's called User Driven Installation. And forgive me if I'm throwing a lot of new stuff at you. And I just hope that you don't let it confuse you. Just take it as, oh, now I have a knowledge of something, right? So it doesn't mean that I'll use it, but at least I know it exists, right? So don't let it confuse you at all. So you have something like user-driven installation. And what that means is um, role-based application deployment. What do I mean by that? Look at this. So if I go here, because I have MDT integrated with SCCM here, I can go UDI Wizard Designer. So look at this. And that comes up and I can go open my UDI Wizard config. And I get this, just to show you what that looks like. If I go, not configure, if I go new computer and I go preview it. So in other words, the user boots their machine and they get this window. Abdul and Nicholas. So they get this, Nicholas, they get this window, right? And you go click next.
Mm-hmm.
You select if you want BitLocker enabled. You enter your BitLocker pin, right? You go next,
Okay.
select the volume you want it installed. Next, the target. So all this I could autofill them, right? So that the user doesn't have to make the decision. Yeah, I could automatically fill in majority of this so that user doesn't make the decision at all. Or the ones I want the user to make the decision, I can leave it. And then when it gets to new computer, again, I could autofill almost all of this. And then it gets to install programs and I can have user-based deployment. You see what I mean here? So for example, if a user is in IT, I can select this and all the applications under IT will be installed for the user as part of the installation. So this is kind of like role-based application deployment. So basically you just select your role and it's going to install all the applications for that role for you. So if I want, for example, if I go back to this one, I could go under application deployment, right? I could go, oh, I want to add another group for a user called for sales. I could go click on this one, add software group. I could say I want to add a new group called sales users. And I don't want to nest it under anything. Okay, now I have sales users. Add software to group. And I can say I want to add an application. You get the point. So, and I can list all the applications that are needed by users in sales in UK, users in sales in this one. And whether service desk or the user, whoever is doing the building, they just at the very beginning of the task sequence, they'll get this page. They go next, 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 select the group of applications they want to install, next, and then they go away. And based on that, based on the group, they've selected the group of applications that is going to install. So that's something that doesn't come with Config Manager by default. But after you integrate with it with MDT, you get this functionality. And then you can go, I can go under For example, that's why I call UDI here, user-driven installation. And if you look at under the steps, you see the exact step where it's loading the UDI wizard. Under edit, sorry. You see the exact step where it begins to load the UDI wizard here. UDI wizard. And it says, yeah, I'm loading the UDI wizard. The user have selected everything. It's going to put it in a variable. And then when it gets to install applications, it's just going to apply all the applications and all the options that the user has, or the service desk guy has selected in the wizard. So again, it's not something that you have to use. It's just something that you be aware that this can provide if you want to explore. So you can use just the SCCM one, but if you want to explore more, you can explore this one and see what it provides. See if it provides something that will be beneficial to you. See if it provides some extra features that you're like, this will be useful for me. So in my own situation, I found it like to be, especially the UDI one. So I use the UDI one in our own case, just because of the amount of deletion. I don't want to be writing a bunch of script for all these dynamic situations. It just makes it easy for me if users or services can get the screen, select whatever group just with a click, and then that decision is made from then on. Rather than me trying to determine, if this user belongs to this group, then deploy this one and this one and this one. Why not just give them a screen at the beginning, select the group that you belong to yourself, and it's going to deploy all the other ones from there. So that's like the advantage of like the integration.
Okay, this is a UDI driven task sequence.
Yes.
It has the whole steps starting, from putting image, using put image,
Yeah.
till selecting this application and install.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
So basically, you can have two kind of task task sequence
Yeah.
for the deployment.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, but this, so this one, it also, so this one, for example, the UDI based one, this is the task sequence itself. So this step,
Yes.
yeah. So you can, yeah, exactly. You can have more than one type of task sequence. For example, you can go create MD task sequence. See client task sequence. You see here, user-driven installation. So that's
Mm.
the one where basically it's dynamic, where it
Okay.
can be dynamic and you can have, again, you can use this UDI wizard to configure exactly. And here's the interesting, I won't go into details again because I don't want to confuse you and I don't want to make it complicated. I don't want to throw a lot of new things too much that is going to get overwhelming. So this is not something that you have to use. So you can, again, remember that like in your operating system deployment stuff, you can start out with what you know and then you develop it later as you go. But this is just something to explore. that
Okay.
that it does provide like some really good capabilities. Okay, for example, going back to the flow, um, for example, one of the things that I do in my own environment is you can see that this one has 11 pages, right? That people can go to. I can add a custom page myself. I can add a page, and in my own case, what I've done is I've added a page, yeah, and I've added a page to set a computer description. And then I capture, and then you can add and say this computer description page. So going back, so this is my own first custom page. I can go and create, okay, what I want is a text box. Yep. And move it there. And what I can do is say label. Um, so I can say computer description. Yep. And I can move it around, move this one around to, yep. And on the settings, so look at this task sequence variable. I can capture whatever the user enters here into a variable. I can call it computer description. Yeah. So I can capture that in a variable and save this page, right? So when the user is as part of that UDI, they will get this page also. Whatever they enter here will be saved in this variable. And what I can now do is in the task sequence, I can go and say, I can add another step to the task sequence that will say, maybe, okay, because I have something open already. Yeah. So I can add another step somewhere down here and say, apply computer description in Active Directory. So maybe that will just be, in my own case, it's just running a PowerShell script. And I say, AD computer description. And the PowerShell script, I point to it, and then I just point to it to use the variable. So maybe, for example, I have a script or a function that says add AD description name whatever description. I can use that variable computer name, computer description. I'm not sure if that's clear at all. And I can add that variable there. You get the point. I'm not sure if that's clear.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, and which is kind of like the same thing. So just to quickly run through this one because we're running out of time, is that you create a task sequence. Task sequences they look complicated, I know, but believe me, just take the time on your whether in your work environment or your lab environment, open up a task sequence and just read it from top to bottom. You'll see that they are really simple because you can understand them. They are really simple. Task sequence again. Automation. I found out the secret to automation. The secret to automation is understanding how something works manually. If I can understand how it works manually, then automation is just making it work manually without human intervention. All this step, just read it one by one and you understand exactly what it's doing. Okay, execute initialization is beginning the task sequence. I look under options, there's no options there. Okay, partition if necessary, options, look at this, there's lots of options here. So in other words, it's only going to run this particular group. So this group is up to this place. It's only going to run this group if these conditions are met. So, and look at this, if all the conditions are true, task sequence variable SMSTS in WinPE equals true. Again, just I read something like that, I bring up Google and I type in SMS TS in WinPE, right? And look at that. Look at that documentation right inside. It's telling me that there are some things called operating system task sequence variables. In other words, there are some variables that are inbuilt into the task sequence. And I can use these variables as conditions in my task sequence. And one of the variables, for example, is the one that we saw now, SMS TS, SMS TS in WinPE. It says, yeah, look at that. This variable is set to true when the current task sequence step is running in the Windows PE environment. Look at that. So that means I can use any of these inbuilt task sequence variables as conditions in my own task sequence. So it's saying, because this is like the default of that it's using, so it's saying I will only apply this group if the machine is in the WinPE phase. In other words, if it's in the normal Windows operating system phase, I won't apply that group. So that's what that is saying, is that if all of these conditions are true, that's when I'm going to apply everything that is under here. So if all these conditions are true, if SMS in WinPE equals true, if SMS TS media type not equals OEM media, I go back to this place and I find out what does SMS TS media type, what does it mean? Specifies the type of media that will be used to initiate the installation. Examples of the types of boot media are, I'm not sure if you're getting the point. So what it's saying is that, reading this one, what this one is saying is, this one specifies have you booted using Pixie? Have you booted using a Prestige media? Have you booted using a bootable media? So that's what that one is saying. So these are the different results for that. So if I'm boot, so basically I can say, if I want to apply a condition in my task sequence, but I want it to apply only if a machine has booted using Pixie, I can say add a step and say run this PowerShell script and add a condition and say if condition SMSTS media equals Pixie. Therefore, it's only going to apply that if the machine has booted using Pixie. And you can go down the line again, and then it's using a WMI query. This one is really a useful one when you're talking about device drivers. For example, what I'll probably typically have is down here. Okay, when we get down here, when after it applies the operating system, so you can see apply operating system, use toolkit package. We talked about because this is part of the MDT one, but okay, the post install. So immediately after applying operating system, I want to apply the drivers. So what I'll probably do is I'll go here and I'll say add a new group. And the new group, I'll say apply drivers. Okay, I'll say apply drivers. Or actually, if I have two more main models in my environment, I have Lenovo and Dell, I can say apply Lenovo drivers. Okay. And options, I can add a condition, query WMI. I'll say, for example, the one that we saw, you can go on Google, for example, and say task sequence driver WMI query, and it'll probably give you an example of how to retrieve computer model with WMI, and you can add that, you can use that in your task sequence. So for example, let's go down here. Select all from this one where model is like this. Okay. So this one may probably give you much more deeper explanation. So task sequence, I found out they are really simple to understand. Look at this. This one. It says enter the WMI query. So select all from this one where model like Optiplex 9010. And what it's trying to do with that is to say apply this driver package if the driver is this model. So what will happen is, for example, in my own environment, if I go Lenovo SCCM driver packages, Lenovo already has a group of packages that they are publishing on their website for different models that they provide. So for example, if I have SCCM ThinkPad T440, I don't need to be manually downloading all the drivers one after the other. I just take this executable for whatever operating system I'm running, download it, extract this executable, and it has all the drivers in it. So I'll go under SCCM, import the driver package, yeah, and I'll say select all where the model is like Lenovo T440, sorry, T440, and I go okay. In other words, that's only going to apply if the, but in this case, this is a group. So I'll say where model is like Lenovo. So the reason is so that machines that are Dell will not be looking for this, will not be applying this group. So they will just keep this group if the machine is doing a Lenovo machine. Okay. Now I have that group. Then I go under here and I'll say add software install package, and I already have the package imported from where I downloaded from Lenovo's website, and I'll select the package or the program, and I'll say the option, maybe this one, apply Lenovo T440 drivers, and I'll say the condition, add query WMI, only apply if the model is like Lenovo T440P. Okay, I have that. I go to the next one, add software install package, apply Lenovo T550 drivers. I'm not sure if that's clear at all. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's actually really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah,
I've never seen this much of
yeah. So it's kind of
SCCM.
so once you can sit down and read these things, it's not complicated at all. All they're doing is just going line by line, doing something manually. They're just going line by line. Again, it's just going this one, go to the option, see what condition is listed there. So basically, anything that doesn't meet, anything that is not in WinPE phase, that's not booting using the OEM media, and that doesn't meet this WMI query, they're going to skip all this group. Then they have another group. So the reason why people use these groups is, for example, like the Lenovo one and the Dell one, because I don't want Dell machines to even try evaluating anything in this group. So I just add all Lenovo drivers under a separate group. So I'll say, hey, only even begin to evaluate this group if your model is Lenovo. If your model is non Lenovo, skip this group completely. So I'll go down here and then I add another group and I'll say this particular group, in this case, I'm applying um, I'm applying Dell drivers. So, and I'll add again the WMI query that the only computer that should even evaluate this group, if your model is like Dell, apply this. Then I'll add all the different Dell models. And that's how to be dynamic, like in like your task sequence. It's really simple, reading it from top to bottom. Again, if you can get the step manually, you can understand automation of anything. So I look at it that, okay, what's it doing? So it does all that. It sets the variable for the format disk and partition. Again, some of these are like not relevant um, because the reason because this may be a different type of task sequence that is capturing something. Um, okay, let me move down here a bit when it says, okay, pre-install, new computer only, options. Again, it's saying make sure the computer is in WinPE. If the computer is not in WinPE, skip all this phase. Um, validate. So in other words, it's going to check does the machine have this minimum memory, minimum processor. Ensure if you don't want to be mistakenly formatting your servers, ensure that the OS is a client OS. Okay. Set the domain join password so you can set a variable. So again, you can set variables for yourself that you can call later. So they are inbuilt variables in task sequences. There are variables that you can set by yourself in task sequences. So let's say you'd want to join this machine to the domain and you want to set the password that is going to use for the domain join, you can set it here. So then in our own case, because we're using UDI, this is where it displays the UDI wizard. And whatever you type in the UDI wizard is going to capture that. Okay, then it goes to the format of the disk. It says task sequence variable SMSTS not equals OEM media. OEM media, by the way, means whenever you click setup.exe, rather than booting using WinP or booting using a bootable media, you've just double click setup.exe. That's the OEM media it's talking about. Or task sequence OS disk partition not equals false. And then it goes step by step to explain what it's doing. Format and partition disk UFI, and it's going to say check for this variable, make sure the machine is using UFI, not BIOS. It's just going step by step that way. For example, in my own situation, you can actually make it way much more simpler than this one looks. In my own situation, I look, what do I do with the new machine? I want to format it, okay? So add the steps for, no, usually that's already pre-added for you, but the steps for formatting the hard drive. So after formatting, what do? You partition it, which is this one. Set the OS disk partition. Okay. Um, it does the partition. You can see what does that set that sequence variable. Um, then if you want BitLocker, pre-provision BitLocker. Or in my own case, I may be like, I don't even want it to be doing BitLocker here, so I can disable this step completely, or I can delete it completely if I want. Set variable for pre-provision BitLocker, and it's just going that way step by step. And then I'm like, eventually it gets to the point of, oh, I'm going to apply the operating system. Where do I want to apply the operating system? The variable name that I've already set for the partition. Then for me, instantly after applying the operating system, I need to apply the drivers, right? So I put a new group to say apply the drivers. So after applying the drivers, then in my own situation, I just go here and go add, um, add computer, or which one? I just want the one to restart the machine, general, and I say restart computer. So because after applying the drivers, I want to restart the computer. And then you see this option here. It says, hey, you're putting a step here to restart this computer. When I restart the computer, do you want to boot into the bootable image? Or because at this point now, it's already applied my reference image, my operating system image, which I can select. I can just go and select the reference image that I imported and say apply to reference image here. So it already applied my reference image. It's applied the driver. I say restart. It's saying, do you want me to boot into the operating system now? Or do you want me to still boot into bootable image? There's no point booting into the bootable image. So I'll say boot into my operating system. And after that, then I begin to add another group. And my own next group will be, now I've applied the operating system, I've applied the drivers, and I want to start installing applications.
So I've never really seen this tool before, but it seems almost as expansive as group policy in terms of what all you can accomplish with it. Is it? I mean, am I correct in that kind of understanding?
It's similar. It's similar. It's kind of like you can do configuration management, but it's mainly for deployment of operating system. But anything that has to
Right.
do with operating system deployment. So again, it's like, again, if you can think of it manually, you can follow it in automation. So just think, if you get a new computer to your environment, what are the steps that you need to do? That's what you need to set up in the task sequence. You need to just read it through, and that's what you need to set up. If you realize that, oh, I need to install my encryption software before I enable BitLocker, then make sure that you don't that the enable BitLocker step is not above here. So install applications, then you can go install applications group, right? And you can say install applications group software install application, and I can go step 01 install encryption software, right? Install encryption software. The application I've already imported into SCCM, I can go load them and say install pick the encryption software, click OK. I had it there and say that's my encryption software. So I go to the next one, I add the next step. So basically I just go, oh, by the way, if the application requires a restart, I just go and say add the next step, restart computer. But also I want to restart into the current operating system. So I had that step there, and I go to the next one, install the next application, install the next application. Then after doing that, then you see the post install. So actually, like in this case, mine will probably not work. You know why? But can anyone tell me why this will not work? What I've done here? Abdul, you want to give it a shot? Why would this not work? Look at this. I'll point to, I've just highlighted the reason there. Then tell me the reason why my current setup will not work.
It's kind of hard to read the message.
Ah, okay. Oh, sorry. So what this one says is set up Windows and config manager. Because I'll tell you, so the reason,
As well, not?
yeah, so this says set up Windows and config manager. Yeah. So the reason is because these applications that I'm adding, they are configuration manager applications, right? For you to install configuration manager applications, you need the configuration manager client, which means
Yes.
which means I need to move this step below
Yeah. Lower.
configuration manager client. So you get the point. So you can follow it
Yes. Yes.
step by step. So as long as you can go, oh, that will fail because I need configuration
Yeah.
manager client installed
Client.
first
Yes.
before I can start installing these applications, because these applications are configuration manager applications. So I just moved them around. So just follow it logically. For example, it won't be logical for me to move the driver step down here. Because, for example, how will the machine that's going to boot, how is it going to get network connection? It needs the drivers. And because now it's not booting into WinPE, it's booting into the operating system. So the WinPE drivers will not work. It needs the operating system driver. So that means after applying my operating system, I need to apply the drivers instantly. So I hope that that's just giving you like a
Logical sequence.
exactly. I hope that's giving you the idea of how to decipher task sequences. Again, don't be afraid of them. I remember when I used to look at this and I'm like, whoa, this looks complicated. Then as I started working with it, I started realizing, oh, this thing is actually just step-by-step stuff. So for example, like in this case, because this is a pre-created one, if I wanted, I could create my own from scratch, Or if you want, you could just take one of the ones that Microsoft already. So if I can go create task sequence and just pick one of the ones that Microsoft already has configured and just edit that. So there's nothing wrong in doing that. Or I can just create a new custom one by myself, which I already did, which is completely blank. And I can just add the stuff by myself from scratch. But again, for most people, especially when you're just beginning, it's probably best to use one of the ones that Microsoft already has and then tweak it and edit it. But again, understanding it is simple. Just don't be
Okay.
afraid of it.
They,
Yeah, carry on, please.
when you integrate MDT with SCCM, is there a pre-defined task sequence to be built there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, there is. So if I can go create them data sequence, you can see um the replace. Oh, you're talking about the upgrade, is it?
No, no. You said to read the one which is built by Microsoft.
Yeah. So yeah, so the Microsoft
Okay.
has default ones in whether you're creating MDT task sequence or SCCM one, they already have ones that
No,
will.
where I can find this is the one the task sequence which is built by Microsoft.
No, it's here. So for example, if I go to right click here and click create task sequence, right?
Hmm.
And I go install an existing image. This is the MD. I'm creating an MDT one, I think. Is this MDT one? No, this is not MDT one. So let me go here. Let's say create MDT task sequence, for example. It says what kind of task sequence I want. I say client task sequence. I click next. So basically, it's going to try to build this for me. What is the name? Name is my task sequence. Next. It says, tell me, do you want to join the domain? So basically, it's going to be building all this for me. It's going to be adding the variables for me. Well, I want to join the domain. The domain I want to join is lightbulbit.co.uk. Okay, which account do you want to use? I'm going to set my account. Lightbulb slash test test test. Click OK. Okay, thanks very much. And what about your Windows account? Do you want to set any name for the Windows user? Say, just set it as test user. Organization, Lightbulb. Okay. Do you want me to create a local admin account? No, I don't want to create anyone. I want to disable the local admin account. Thanks very much. So basically, you're using a wizard to build this. Task sequence will never be used to capture an image. Yeah, no problem. You see the one that whenever you're using the reference image one, and you're doing it outside SCCM, this is the one where you select, I want you to capture it to this destination, and this is the account.
Okay.
Yeah, but in this case, we're not capturing anything. We're now in the deployment phase. We finished all our reference image. He said, tell me the boot image you want me to use. I select the boot image that I want it to use. So here's one thing to notice. If you're using SCCM task sequence, you have to use an SCCM boot image. If you're using an MDT task sequence, you have to use an MDT boot image. They won't work for one another. So if
Mm.
you integrate it with SCCM, if you integrate MDT with SCCM, I would say just go with MDT from then on because it actually gives you more functionality, like we said. So for example, I select my boot image, I go next. Um, here's like the ones for MDT, and there's no time because we've run out of time already. Specify an existing MDT package. So this is one that I can say create a new one and just specify a path, and MDT will create a new one for me. And this is what you have to do if you're just starting out using MDT with SCCM integrated. You have to specify a path and create the MDT package. And what the MDT package is doing is a set of scripts that MDT is using to do what it's doing. So I can say create one, but if I have one created already, I select that and I say my MDT toolkit package, whatever. Next, um, specify the OS image, my reference image that I already captured. Okay. Next. So basically, it's building all this for me. Which one do you want to apply? This one. Next. Deployment method. Look at this. Remember the user UDI one that we mentioned. I can perform a UDI one. No, I don't want UDI one. I just want the zero, no user interaction. Next. Config manager client package because this is the one that is going to use to install the SCCM client. So if I don't have one already, I can just create a new one, and MDT will create a new one for me. I can just select if I have one already, which I do in this case. I can just expand and say SCCM client. Next, USMT package. I'm not going to be using user state migration, but in case you want to use it again, you can just create a new one. or you can specify an existing one, which I already created earlier. And next, specify existing settings package. The S is the MDT one again, so I already have one. You can create a new one at that point. No spread package is required. Next, next, finish. Now it's created this, right? So now I can now take this one and I can use this as my base to begin to edit this one. You get the point? So because now it's created the base one for me, right? But it doesn't have
Yes.
all my applications that I want to install. It doesn't have all my drivers there. So I can now say, okay, thanks very much for this base one. I can now start looking. Actually, some of these I don't really need. For example, I won't be using USMT. This one is basically saying if I go USMC offline migration equals to true. Again, bring up the Google, go find out what is USMT offline migration, and then you find out this one is probably talking about if you have the option to say, I want to migrate the existing content of the hard drive. It says if this is equals to true, then it's going to apply all this. It's going to capture state and then release state and all that stuff. So it's really simple. So I'll encourage, if anything that I want you to take away from this, don't be afraid of, if it looks rough and rugged, don't be afraid of it. Just think in your mind, I can understand it. It's simply a step, a list of manual steps. That's all it is. It's a list of manual steps. You can understand it. It's not complicated. Okay,
Hmm?
any questions then before we end, because we've run out of time. And there's a lot that I wanted to demo before. I mean, operating system development deployment. There's a lot. I tell you, I wanted to demo this one to you and just show you the Pixie boot process, so we can do some packet capture. But we didn't even touch on that, close to that at all today. But we'll leave that for another time. So, any questions at all from what we've mentioned? At least from now, will you say you are not? Are you still afraid of task sequences, or are you? Do you feel that you'll be stronger to read them, that you won't be afraid of them anymore?
I feel like I understand this at least 27% better, maybe even more. You know,
Nice.
I'm not sure.
Excellent.
I mean, I would say somewhere in that range,
Ex-
maybe a little lighter, maybe a little heavier.
Excellent. Excellent. Like that. And Abdul, any questions, any comments, anything?
Okay, now
Yeah.
to boot, over a network,
Yes.
okay, you have to configure some DHCP options.
Yes.
Okay, now I don't know, what is the best practice? I mean,
So that
to
was,
to mention
yeah.
this,
Yeah,
to
carry on.
mention, this option in that specific VLAN,
Yeah.
which usually, let's say I have, on every site I have some one IT engineer who responsible about, deploying the images.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I can add this DHCP option
Mm-hmm.
on that specific VLAN, which is usually bring a new laptop and connect the network cable and then start the process.
Yeah. So this was the one that I originally wanted to go into details about today, because this is a UTM, this is a Sophos UTM in a GNS3 environment, and I was going to use a switch and then capture the packet, and so we see what's going on. But I will try to make it as brief as people as possible, because I really won't like to go over time, but I'll try to make it as brief as possible. So what
Mm,
you normally have is you have this machine here that does Pixie, right?
mm.
So this machine has a network adapter that is Pixie capable. Not all network adapters are Pixie capable, but most nowadays are Pixie capable, right? You have this network adapter.
Yeah.
Now in config manager, you have your management point, you have your distribution point.
Hmm.
So your management point, of course, just the management point, right? It's the one that the clients communicate with. Your distribution point is the one that has to do with Pixie booting.
So that means I have to install WDS and
So you can install WDS manually, but you don't have to. So in my own environment, what we've done is this: we have a recipe, something we call a recipe. So we do that for all our servers or all our services and servers. So say this is the recipe for distribution point deployment, and part of the recipe is this. So you go to this one, you want to deploy a distribution point. You go to administration, the site servers. I can right click on any server, right, and go add site system roles, right? If I want to add a
Mm.
distribution point, or if it's a new server that isn't here, I can right click and create a site system server and then make it a
Mm.
distribution point. But in this case, this one is already a distribution point. So these are the options
Properties.
that, yeah. So these are the options you have to configure for the distribution
Pixie.
point, Pixie, exactly. So look at that. Once you select the option to enable Pixie, it says WDS will be installed if required. In other words, if you've not, yeah,
Okay.
if you've not installed it already, SCCM will take care of that for you. In other words, actually, when it comes to Pixie, SCCM handles all the configuration. Let it handle all the configuration. So in
Mm,
this,
okay.
yeah, in this case, this what I've done in my own situation is that let's say I have a remote branch here. Let's say this is the London branch. This is the Aberdeen branch, or like these are headquarters branch. This is the London branch. Is that for majority of our branches we have distribution point. So I have a distribution point here, and when I'm configuring this distribution point, I'll say enable Pixie, install WDS by yourself on it. Yeah. So this is how the old Pixie stuff works. Is I have a DHCP server here normally. This Pixie has to be able to communicate with this guy, but it needs an IP address. So what will happen is that it's going to send a DHCP request to this guy, right? And this guy will give it a DHCP offer. Now, what happens is that it sends a request to this guy. There are two ways that this can work. So it sends a request to this guy gives it an offer, right? Inside that offer, I could configure options 66, I think, and option 67. And option 66, I can say your Pixie server is equals to the distribution point here. Your what they call WDS MP, or what they call MBP, Network Boot Protocol, something like that. MBP. Your MBP equals to SMS boot whatever. I can configure that in the DHCP so that when this client contacts DHCP server, yeah, and the DHCP server gives it an IP address, part of that option that the DHCP server gives to it contains this information about what your Pixie server is, the location to download the configuration from on that Pixie server. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is that most likely this one is on a separate network, right? And this guy has a firewall in between here, right? So what I can do is I can say um, on this firewall, I have to configure a DHCP relay, right? And on the DHCP relay, configuration of the DHCP relay is usually simple. It's usually saying, if you receive any DHCP packet, send it to DHCP server. But in this case, I can say, send it to both DHCP server and the distribution point on the DHCP relay. And what that will achieve is this. In that case, I won't need this DHCP option configuration at all, because the DHCP client will send a DHCP packet, the firewall will get it. Firewall will send the DHCP request both to DHCP server and also to this distribution point. This one will respond with an IP address. This one will respond with information on how to do Pixie boot. And
Hey,
yeah, carry on.
hey guys, I gotta go.
Yeah, you have to. Abdul, I'm not sure
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no problem, Nicholas.
and roommate is
Yeah,
yelling
it's
at me.
clear. It's clear. Yes.
Yeah, no problem. We'll continue with it. Well, actually, we'll continue. I was gonna, okay, let's continue with this next time. Yeah, is that okay?
Okay, no
I promise.
problem.
So
No
I
problem.
have two promises that I've given to
Thanks,
you.
David.
No problem, it's all right. So I have two promises that I've given to you. First promise that I gave to you is the one for the Azure one. We'll talk about that one later. But this one
Okay.
we'll continue from there. But yeah, because
Okay, no
I was
problem.
gonna really explain this one. If I bring the demo that I was gonna show originally in details, if I go to capture this switch port, because this guy is on a totally separate network, right? And is doing DHCP request. If I start this guy, stop it, and then start, and then if this guy starts, and then I can go F12. So let's just reset it. Let's do reset, and if I go F12 and I say boot from LAN, and you see, okay, it does all that. And contacting server 192.168.140.11, looking for policy, because I already booted earlier. But what I've done in this case is because the DHCP server, okay, F12, quickly, yeah, start putting now. Okay, I wasn't quick enough. Let's reset it again. F12, LAN, then I get ready to press F12 for network boot. Yep, then it's starting to do network boot.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
but
yes.
let's go look at what's happening if I go to Wireshark. Is that, let's go to DHCP offer, right? The DHCP offer. So this guy sent a broadcast, right? The broadcast, because this guy is behind the firewall, right? This is the firewall.
Yeah.
This guy is behind the firewall. So what I've had to do on my firewall is this: HTTPS 192.168.2.130, and then bring up the firewall. What I've had to do on the firewall is what you have to get your network engineer to do, which is to configure the DHCP relay, which is basically saying any DHCP packet from this network, send it to this DHCP server. That's what, and I'll just to show you, like, I like myself as UTM a lot. So if I go to network services under my DHCP, and you said the relay here, I've said anything from this network, which is the network I'm coming from, just forward that DHCP packet to this DHCP server. Now, normally what I would do is I will add two DHCP servers here. One of them will be my DHCP server that will give the client its IP address. The second will be my distribution point that will give the client its PXE information. So I'll mention both the DHCP server and distribution point here. One will give it IP address, the other will give it PXE boot information. But because this UTM has a limitation of you can only specify one server, that's the reason why I've had to, on my DHCP server, if I bring this one up, on my DHCP server here, I've had to configure the DHCP options, which is to say this one. So this is the DHCP scope. I've added two scope options, 66 and 67. 66 to say this is your distribution point, or this is
the distribution point.
Yeah, this is the one that will give you your PXE information.
Okay.
And this is the one, this is the location that you download that information from. So this one is pretty standard. So for example, you set up a distribution point with SCCM, right? You set up your distribution point. Let me show you what it's actually doing. So it's because SCCM will use WDS in the backend. If you look at your distribution point, it's going to actually create this folder here called remote install somewhere. And under remote install, you see this one called. So if you're using just normal WDS, it'll be under boot and images. But you see that because SCCM are taking control of WDS, you have SMS boot and SMS images. So under SMS boot, under x64, x86, it's just the location. This is the one that will tell it. This is how you will boot up. So that's all this one is doing. So, but it has to know where do I get that information from about how do I boot up. So it knows this is the server that will tell me how to boot up, but the information of how to boot up, where will I get it from? It's under SMS boot x64, this location. So then that's what I've put under the DHCP server to say SMS boot x64 WDS MBP. So that is because I wasn't able to get the packet via the DHCP relay to the distribution point. Assuming I can specify 2 DHCP servers under the DHCP relay. I don't need this configuration at all
Yes, correct.
because a packet will go to the DHCP server, the same packet will go to the distribution point. Both of them will respond with 2 different information. DHCP server will respond with IP address. Distribution point will respond with information about how to boot up. So I'm not sure if that's clear. Is that
Okay.
clear?
No, it's clear.
Yeah.
That means if I have, 3 different distribution point in 3 different sites, I have to mention that specific distribution point.
Yeah. In the DHCP options there.
Yeah, and the DSCP
Yeah.
option.
Or the other option is if you can get your network admin guy to configure
Mm,
the DHCP relay that
mm.
DHCP requests don't only go to the DHCP server, they also go to the distribution point. Then you won't need to configure the DHCP option.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Because in that case, back to the diagram, in that case, what will happen is DHCP server will get the request. Distribution point will also get the request. Distribution point will respond with Pixie image. Actually, I can quickly. I'm running over time. Okay, I'll just quickly.
No issues.
Yeah,
If you don't have more time, we can, just postpone it to the next
yeah,
hangout.
yeah. Let's do it the next time. Let's do it the next time. So that
No
will be much
problem, no
better.
problem.
Yeah. So,
Thank you,
but
thank you very much for your time.
no problem. It's all right. Just quickly take you to this one again. Discover, offer, request, acknowledge. Right. Look at the offer that
Yeah.
that the DHCP server has given to this client under Bootstrap, and then you see the
Mm.
option that we configured. It has the boot file name, and it has the
Yes.
option 66, which will tell it the TFTP server name
TFTP set.
and the boot file name, which we configured. And then this guy is like, oh, now I know my TFTP server name and I know the location. Then here's the client 192.168.130.11 contacting the distribution point and saying, hey, can you give me this file in this location, please? And distribution point responding and say, yeah, go ahead, that's the file. And what that file is saying is, this is how you boot. This is the boot image that you use. That's all this file. That is the information inside this file. This is how you boot. This is the boot image you use. And then it's like, okay, thanks very much. I know the boot image to use. Now, can I download that boot image now? Then it begins to download the boot image, which is what we saw, where now it's downloading the boot image. Okay, then. Okay, Abdul. So
Okay.
we'll see again next
Thank
time.
you for your time.
No problem.
Thank
It's all
you.
right. Have a good week.
Bye
Speak to
bye.
you later. Yeah. Cheers. Bye.